He's like, I got a good view.
Okay, so we're here to talk today about Crowley's views on education and what he had to say about that. And this was, to me, one of the more interesting topics that we've looked at, because when I started to look at it, I realized that usually when I prepare for one of these things, it's like one book that I read or one area of Crowley's work that I look at. And Crowley talks about this through pretty much everything that that he writes. This is like one of the most important issues to him, which is not necessarily evident right away, but I mean, I think that when Crowley was thinking about the spread of Thelema, he really was considering the fact that you're going to have to look at the next generation, always the next generation, and getting people to embrace it through that. Crowley has a great line which says, "It's useless to teach anyone who has to be taught," and I think that that's fundamental to this whole thing. Crowley's basic critique of educational systems is that they're mandatory. And he doesn't really think that they should be mandatory. I believe in his Confessions he says that the only things that people should be taught how to do are how to make clothes, how to make food, and how to have sex. And lessons, anything else, should be voluntary, basically. He doesn't really feel that people should be taught to do things that are against their nature, and I think that this is fundamental to Thelema. What I would say about our educational system in particular, and the problem with mandatory education, is that it's fundamentally hostile to self-discipline, and we can see this in our culture. We pay colleges to force us to read books that we could read on our own if we wanted to. Yeah. We pay personal trainers to force us to work out, and when really we could just do that on our own. We pay all these people to get on our backs and make us do stuff that we're perfectly capable of doing without them. And I think that that's a really big deal here. You can see that everything that we teach forms of discipline, but we don't teach self-discipline. For example, if you put someone in the military, they're going to learn all kinds of very interesting skills, but they're going to have someone who gets on their back and yells at them and screams in their face until they do these things. And I personally, from my college experience, know a lot of people who literally just take courses in things that they're interested in because they know for a fact they wouldn't read the books on their own. I think that this is also hurtful to the whole educational system and becomes a ripple effect in terms of education professionals. You take a teacher and put them in front of a class full of 30 people, and where 25 of the people don't care about the subject they're going to teach, pretty soon that teacher's going to become bitter, and they're not going to be very happy about what they're doing. They're going to get frustrated, and their frustration ripples out into the students, who they become frustrated as well. They're not learning as well, and it's a cumulative effect. Teachers have a really hard go of it because we're in a culture that's very hostile to school in and of itself. I mean, if you look at the fundamental message behind children's programming, it's like, your parents are lame, your teachers are lame, TV is cool, watch TV instead, and that's kind of, that's a big deal if children are constantly getting the message from television, which they watch all the time, hey, school sucks, why would you want to go to school? Well, that makes life tough for the teachers who are trying to get them to learn stuff. What becomes, therefore, further problematic is that schools are evaluated on the marks that the students get. So they have to be motivated to get the students to get high marks in all of their subjects, which leads to the kind of thing that we see particularly in the States, where they essentially have to fudge tests to get state funding, or here where they have to teach to the tests so that students can pass and get high marks, so that the school can keep going, but the students aren't actually learning anything. And this comes from the fact that they are being forced to learn about things they are not interested in. And I will quote my father here, where he says, very similar to Crowley, he says, you can't, if someone doesn't want to learn something, you can't teach it to them. They have to want to know the subject. And trying to teach someone who doesn't want to know what you're talking about is probably the most frustrating thing in the world. This sort of standardization, as Crowley points out, leads to people competing towards the same kind of goals and the same kind of objects, where they don't necessarily even want the same things. And it gets to the point where learning certain things becomes almost fetishistic, where you have people who are fundamentally disinterested in subjects, but they feel like they can they need to know them to appear smart. And they want to appear smart, so they need to know about Shakespeare, for example. Perfect example. And they may not actually be interested, but to them it's like almost like a talisman of intelligence. So even if you hate Shakespeare, then you have to have that information, or you're not a smart guy. This leads us pretty much straight up into advertising, where we are all told to want particular things and aim for particular goals. And we now live in a culture which is only literate enough to read billboards, and that's about it. And that's the final goal. Crowley was fundamentally opposed to the idea that everyone should be taught to read and write, even, which we see as that is considered a hallmark of the education of a country. What's the literacy rate? But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. I think his line is that he opposes education in the sense of the ability to read newspapers, and that's just not. It's not a good sign. And frankly, there are some people who don't care about reading. They don't want to. So why force them to do it? It doesn't make any sense. Just leave them alone. Let them do their thing. If they're happy doing their thing, then fine. Let them enjoy the quiet wisdom of cattle, as Crowley says. This is the interesting thing about Thelemic elitism, and I think is lost on many Thelemites, is it is not actually supposed to be a sense of superiority. It's a sense of almost duty towards these people. Because although, yes, they don't want to advance themselves, we're not supposed to regard ourselves, we're supposed to take care of them the same way that you would take care of livestock. Which is, sounds condescending, but at the same time, you have to take care of your livestock.
Yeah, it's not forcing them to be something they're not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is kind of like the whole mess of Western civilization that's been going on for generations now. We have a culture which has been forced to jump through all these hoops that they don't want to jump through to get to the things that they don't even want to get to. So everyone, and if you look at why people are frustrated, why there's a lot of malaise in our society, why people are disenchanted and upset with what's going on, well, they've been forced to do a lot of things that are completely contrary to their nature. And that's not good for anybody. Okay, so those are the problems. Crowley has a few solutions, and I don't know that they're necessarily the correct solutions, but they need to be tried and explored to figure that out. And I don't think they've ever been tried at this point. There's a great, one of Crowley's great unpublished works that you can find online is Liber 51, which is an account of the Lost Continent. And it's not really finished, it kind of trails off at the end, apparently. And if you look at the first chapter where he talks about the outer sort of regions of Atlas, he says, these people, basically, they have every opportunity all over the place to get to the main city. All they have to do is learn to fly. And they have instructions everywhere on how to fly, but no one ever does. No one ever reads them or figures it out, but everyone has to have the opportunity. The information is there. All they have to do is take advantage of it. And that's Crowley's view of education. He talks about how they educated kids at Kefaloon, and I think this is very instructive. For example, he says, if they want a kid to figure out if a kid is interested in reading, they'll take him out and say, we can go here for ice cream. And then the kid might ask, how you know that? And he says, well, I can read the sign. And then comes the interesting point where he says specifically, we are not to encourage this, we are to discourage this. We're going to tell them, oh no, it's too much work, it's too much trouble, you don't want to learn to read, what are you talking about? No, it's easier to just sit back and relax. I'll read the sign for you, don't worry about it. Now you have your people who will agree with that and go with that, and then you have people who don't like to be told what to do. And this is where the distinction comes between people who like to be told what to do and don't like to be told what to do. And this is the people that Crowley wants to identify as the people who don't like to be told what to do. Because these are the people who will make good Thelemites. These are the people who will be useful in society and become someone and educate themselves. The people who like to be told what to do, great. Well, let's just tell them what to do. And then everything works out. Everyone wins.